Most of the time in League of Legends, you have to play different champions for different lanes. However, right now there is one champion that can make any lane his home. This champion is Nautilus, and while it hasn't been uncommon to see him in both top lane and support, he is now also viable in the mid lane. This effectively makes Nautilus League of Legends' ultimate flex pick. Now, before we get too far into why Nautilus is so good all of a sudden, I want to remind you to like the video and subscribe. We post new content done by challenger players every day. That being said, let's take a quick overview at the Titan of the Depths. Now, due to Nautilus's Q and ultimate, he has always been a viable pick in the support role. 4 of his abilities provide CC of some sort, making him a very potent pick in the bot lane, with very high kill pressure. There are very few champions who are able to survive support Nautilus's all-in. For similar reasons, Nautilus top has been very strong in the past as well. He's able to tank a lot of damage with his W, and he certainly doesn't lack wave clear due to his W paired with his E. He's also fairly safe in the top lane, and has enough mobility to escape ganks due to the fact that he can use his hook on walls to drag him to the wall. This is the first time, however, that Nautilus has been a meta pick in the mid lane. Due to increases in the AP scaling on his kit, as well as reduction in cooldowns, he's able to easily hold his own even into most ranged mages. The lowered cooldown on his passive, paired with the extra AP ratio that he's getting on his E, allows him to outshove almost any champion in the game. Now, of course, there are going to be champions that are able to outshove him, for example, Talon or Aurelion Sol, but he's able to just take fights on those champions instead of trying to shove the wave, and stand inside the wave and prevent them from getting their shove off first. He also scales very well for a melee ranged mage due to the fact that he's able to so easily proc Aftershock. 3 of his abilities will proc Aftershock, and it will just make him so tanky and hard to kill that he's able to drop his entire combo and get out most of the time. If you're still struggling to survive, even through Aftershock and your shield, you're also able to buy a Zhonya's for even more survivability. Now that we sort of have an idea as to why Nautilus is viable in each of these 3 roles, I'd like to go over some of the role-specific mechanics that exist for Nautilus. Some of the things you need to know in order to be able to play him in all 3 different roles. For support Nautilus, using your passive is something that you need to watch out for. You see, your passive will trigger on regular minions, meaning if you are trying to prep minions for your ADC under tower, you might actually deny your ADC due to the extra damage that the minion will take. So make sure to watch out while you're trying to prep minions on Nautilus, since you might accidentally mess up the CS instead. Another thing to keep in mind about Nautilus's passive is he is able to trigger Targon stacks from pretty much full HP on a minion, due to his passive dealing so much damage paired with the execute. You can use this to your advantage to get a Targon's proc in the middle of a fight, say that's going poorly. If you've already dropped all of your cooldowns and the only things left to do is to try and heal your ADC with a Targon's proc, you can look for any minions that are just even a little bit lower than full HP. As far as early laning goes, for support Nautilus, he's not very strong in the early game. If you're able to get a hook, that's great. You can isolate a target and try and burst them down, but in a straight up 2v2, you will likely not see very much success. This is because at levels 1 and 2, Nautilus does not have a lot of damage, and he needs all 3 of his abilities to really pack a punch. You should look to play the first few levels very safe on support Nautilus, since the only way for you to lose the lane at level 6 is if you die early. The lane dynamic actually changes quite a bit when you hit level 6 on support Nautilus. At this point, you should be looking to all in due to the fact that you can all in pretty much any champion from 100 to 0 and get a kill. Some exceptions would be Xayah or Morgana. If you do intend to play support Nautilus, I would recommend banning Morgana, as she is probably the hardest counter pick for you in the entire game. Another option once you hit level 6 is to try and roam to different lanes and kill them. Your ultimate is a very, very potent tool, and you will be able to lock down pretty much any champion and guarantee a kill, especially if your jungler is roaming with you. As far as your build goes, you're going to want to be rushing Remnant of the Aspect into Zeke's Convergence. You'll then want either a Locket or a Knight's Vow, and finally finish it up with a Redemption. Of course, get Moby Boots early if you're looking to roam, and if you're not, get Ninja Tabby or Mert Treads. Your skill order is going to be the same in every position. You want to max your E first, then your W, and finally your Q, taking a point in your ultimate anytime you can. Now moving on to top lane Nautilus. In the top lane, Nautilus serves a completely different role. He goes from a champion that's simply looking for picks and to roam early on in the game to a tank that's looking to scale into the late game and frontline for his team. You also play the early levels very different on top lane Nautilus. The reason behind this is because you are mainly playing against melees in this lane, and since you have Aftershock and your W at level 1, it's almost impossible to outtrade you. Now, that being said, there are a few champions that can outtrade you at level 1, for example, Trundle or Darius or even Olaf, so be careful to watch out for that. Any champion that has a spammable ability at level 1 is something that you want to look out for. Don't take an extended trade on those champions. Short trades are still very, very good though. Now, if you're not able to buy a Bami's Cinder on your first recall, then you should get 2 Doran's Rings. The reason behind this is Nautilus has some severe mana issues, and if you don't have Bami's Cinder to help you push the wave, you're going to have to be spending a lot more mana. Now, once you have your Bami's Cinder, you need to take a look and see what type of damage the enemy laner is going to be dealing to you. If it's primarily magic damage, then you want to get a Spectre's Cowl before finishing your Sunfire Cape. If it's physical damage, then just finish the Sunfire Cape, you don't have to worry about anything else. You have a few different options for magic resistance items on Nautilus. If you're not forced to rush a Spectre's Cowl early on into the game, then you're able to look for an Abyssal Mask. However, if you did have to pick up a Spectre's Cowl, then look to build it into either a Spirit Visage or a Adaptive Helm. As far as armor items go, you're going to be wanting to look for Sunfire Cape plus at least 1 or 2 extra armor items every single game. The items that work best for Nautilus are Thornmail, Randuin's Omen, and Iceborne Gauntlet. You're also always able to round your build out with a Warmog's armor just to keep yourself topped off if you are playing into a very, very pokey team comp. Moving on to the newest iteration of Nautilus, mid lane Naut. Now, mid lane Naut is very, very, very different from the other 2 instances of Naut. In fact, you don't even build tank on this. You're going to be building full AP and dealing as much damage as possible. Your main goal is to survive the early lanes, since you're not really able to kill anything unless they go full melee onto you. If you do see an opening to hook the enemy laner, then by all means take it. However, most of the time they're just going to be playing behind their minions, and you're going to be wanting to clear the minions, shove them in, and get your gold. Once you have your proto belt and you're level 6, things completely change in the lane. In fact, most people will be so used to you playing the lane passive and just shoving that you'll be able to 100-0 them without them seeing it coming at all. The build order for AP Nautilus mid lane is Proto Belt into Sorcerer's Shoes into Morellonomicon. After that, you most likely are going to want a Zhonya's and then a Death Cap. Of course, round out the build with a Void Staff to make sure that you're dealing damage once people build Magic Resist. Now, this is the version of Nautilus that requires the most practice to make work. However, once you have this down, it by far outcarries the other 2. The reason why AP Nautilus is so strong is because he's able to use his ultimate to hit an entire enemy team. You ultimate the person in the back of the fight, and then you're able to play the rest of the fight front to back. Your ultimate alone will chunk out a carry to pretty much half HP. 2 of your abilities will hit the entire enemy team most of the time, and your Proto Belt can also hit an entire team. In fact, the only single target ability that you have is your Q. The biggest thing to keep in mind on mid lane Nautilus is no matter what, you always want to ult the target in the back. Try and get your ultimate to hit as many people as possible. Don't ever just ult for a pick on the person in the front, because your main goal is to deal damage. It's not to pick people. And if you don't have a magic damage dealer on your team, you're going to suffer a lot. So try to hit as many people with that ultimate as possible before you dive in. This of course does not apply if their carries are playing on the front line and you can just 100-0 them. Now, just some tips on Nautilus in general. Your Q hitbox is pretty big, so people can hide behind both towers and minions in order to avoid it. So if you see somebody standing close to minions or a tower, don't even try to hook them, it might get you killed. Another thing about your Q is you can use it to drag yourself to terrain. You could use it as mobility to travel faster, and you can use it as a escape route. You can also E right before your Q drags you somewhere if you are being chased. This will apply your E's slow while still dragging you to the place that you're going to. This is more efficient than Eing then Qing because you have to stand still in order to E anyways, and your Q is going to pull you to the same place no matter where you run to. Another tip for Nautilus is to use his shield at the start of a fight as opposed to reactively, or for an auto attack reset. While it is okay early game to use your W as an auto attack reset, late game it really doesn't do anything for you and you just want to be using that shield and getting the cooldown started. That does it for today's video on Nautilus. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. We post new content done by challenger players every day. If there's anything that you think that we could improve or any videos that you'd like to see in the future, make sure to let us know in a comment down below. As always, I hope you learned something valuable and I'll see you in the next one.